Okay, we are solving quadratic and cubic equations using inverse operations. What is a quadratic equation? A quadratic equation is in the form x squared equals a number. For example, if we had x squared equals 4, we would solve this equation using the inverse of squared. What undoes squared? Square root. So we are going to take the square root of both sides. Square root means what times itself is x squared. What times itself is x squared? X, which is what we're trying to solve for, what we're trying to get by itself. And then what times itself is 4. There are two possible solutions here. When you take the square root in an equation, you need to consider both the positive solution and the negative solution because, so we write that with plus or minus 2, meaning positive 2 is a solution, negative 2 is a solution. We have two possible solutions because if you're squaring x, that means you're multiplying x times itself and you're getting 4. This would work for positive 2 times positive 2, or this would work for negative 2 times negative 2. So most, not all, but many equations in the form x squared equals a number will have two solutions. Many equations will have two solutions. X squared equals 225. Show the inverse operation, square root on both sides. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 225 is positive or negative 15. So here I have two solutions. When might you have one solution? What do we take the square root of where only one number makes sense? The square root of 0. So in the instance where you have x squared equals 0, you still take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 0 is just 0. We don't have a positive versus a negative 0, so it's just 0. This is the only time where you have one solution. So x squared equals a number could be two solutions if that number is positive. Could be one solution if that number is 0. What about a number here where x squared is equal to negative 9? Let's think about this. We're multiplying something times itself. What times itself equals negative 9? The only way to multiply a number times itself is 3 times 3, but that would be positive. So that doesn't work. Negative 3 times negative 3, but a negative times a negative is also a positive, like we saw before. That's why x squared equals positive 9 had two solutions. So there's no possible solution here that would make a number, a real number, squared equal to a negative. So there's no real number you can substitute for x to make this a true statement. When we try to take the square root, we have the square root of a negative number, and we should know that that is not a real number. The square root of a negative is not a real number, so we say no real number solutions. There is not a real number that would work in this equation. The other type of equation we're going to be looking at are cubic equations. So we have x cubed equals 27 versus x cubed equals negative 27. Let's look at those two scenarios. If x cubed equals 27, we would use the inverse of cubed, which is the cube root. Remember, that's the radical symbol with an index of 3. What we do to one side, we do to the other, and the cube root of 27 is 3. Well, let's look at the instance here where we have x cubed equals negative 27. Can we take the cube root of a negative number? Can we multiply a number times itself 3 times and get negative 27? Well, 3 times 3 times 3 wouldn't work, but because that gives me positive 27. What about negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3? Since we are cubing, a negative times a negative is a positive, and then we multiply by that odd man out, that last negative, and we do get negative 27. So the value of x here is negative 3. The cube root of negative 27 is negative 3. So let's review. If you have an x squared equation equal to a positive number, you will have how many solutions? 2. If you have x squared equal to 0, you will have how many solutions? 1. The square root of 0 is just 0. If you have x squared equal to a negative number, you'll have how many solutions? None. No real number solution. Those are quadratic equations. Then we have cubic equations. No matter what x cubed equals, x cubed could equal positive, 0, or negative. No matter what x cubed equals, you will have one solution always. Let's look at a couple more examples where we add multi-steps to solving the equation.